So indeed, in the kind of last part of the course, so now you have done already quite a bit of work by doing the exercises and learned the things that we have covered during the course, but then the final part, which will be 40% of the grade in the end, is the kind of bit more broader final work for you. So there is this final assignment page at the bottom of the website where we have quite a bit of information about what are the aims of this final assignment and like what should you do. For this year, we have basically 3 options for you. So there is one which is kind of focused on analyzing accessibility based on this travel time matrix data, which is in here. And the idea in here is that this has been quite well defined what you should do, and there's quite a bit of information about, well, the different things that should be covered in the final assignment, and you can read about that thing. Then the second option is this kind of urban indicators assignment, where the idea is that the purpose of developing the kind of analysis workflow is that you can yourself decide what kind of data you are using, what kind of analysis you are actually doing in the final assignment. There are certain criteria, so for example you should define and use 2 to 4 different indicators that you should kind of analyze in the assignment in here. You can, for example, take 2 cities in Finland, such as Helsinki and Tampere, and compare those to each other using different kind of urban indicators that can be, for example, information about population distribution and demographics, and how do those cities actually differ from those perspectives. What is the building density, for example, what is the green area index, urban population growth, accessibility, or urban design. These are just examples. You can use whatever indicators you find interesting for you, but the idea is to kind of first define few research questions for yourself. In the beginning, have a short introduction, like what are the goals that you want to actually answer to these, and then really the idea is that you use the things that you have learned now during these two courses, so GeoPython and Automating GIS, and kind of show us that, well, what you can do. The idea of this one is to kind of follow a bit of the scientific article structure, so that you would have a short introduction, like what are the aims, what are the research questions that I want to answer. Then you should have a short description of the data sets that you have been using, because you have really now you can choose whatever, so that we can actually evaluate. So we need to understand what kind of data you have been using and so on. Then you should have a short generic description of the methods that you have used. So for example, that, well, calculating, I don't know, green area index, I used this kind of approach to do that. So that have a description of that, and then the actual codes that you have been using to produce. So you should basically, in the final assignment, have a notebook where you document everything that you do, and write the codes that you use to actually produce the results that you have been interested in, being the indicators of different sorts. And then you should make visualizations that supports your kind of findings, and of course thinking of try to do them as well as you can, so that they are visually pleasing and so on. Then when you have some kind of result visualizations, of course you want to tell a bit for the one who is reading them that what can you actually see from those. visualization and from those results. And then in the end, kind of following the scientific kind of structure, so you have kind of a discussion. We don't need to now focus too much that you would have a lot of literature that you go through, but more kind of have a bit of healthy criticism towards the data that you have been using, towards the methods. What are kind of the shortfalls maybe that might be arising with these analyses, so that you kind of think a bit of those kind of things as well. And then indeed some technical considerations. So you can write useful like one notebook for doing these things, or then you can divide those kind of notebooks into separate ones, so that, for example, one indicator could be with one notebook, and then you go through those things. If you separate them to separate notebooks, then you should have maybe one kind of introduction notebook, or at least some documentation in the README file of the in the repository explaining that from this notebook you can find this, from that one you can find that, and so on. Then indeed you can, this is a GIS course, so creating maps is highly recommended. You can create either static maps or if using notebooks, so please feel free to do also interactive maps if you think that they are something that you want to do, or that they might actually provide some useful kind of add-ons to the information that you have. You can also create other kind of graphics such as line plots or any kind of plots that we learned maybe more during the first period in this GeoPython course. Then maybe something considering the idea of this one is that think that you in this assignment, the idea is to compare two different areas to each other. So it can be indeed Helsinki and Tampere, or Helsinki and some other city, but it can be also like neighborhoods in Helsinki region, for example, that you compare to each other. But have the idea in your mind that you should write the code in a way that it should be easy to take basically any city in Finland and kind of repeat the work. So the idea is that what we are kind of aiming at with this is that you would use as much functions as possible, so that there is these repetitive things that you need to do for example, for these two different areas that you are now analyzing. But if you use functions, it's easy for you to basically take data from the third city or fourth city and kind of do the same things for those, and then we can have this nice comparative setting in the analysis. So that's kind of the purpose of automating the GIS processes, so you would kind of have that approach in mind. And then maybe a little bit about the data. So indeed you can use any data that we have now given you during the course, but there is a lot of different data sources available. So one thing, for example, from this PyTuli service, let's see if I can open it. There is also an English version of this available. So this is open for all the, you are all from the university, so you can use this data, but there is a lot of data providers listed in here. So you can kind of explore these a bit, like when thinking of if you do this one, so when thinking of the final assignment, you can explore a bit of the data sets, but maybe a good option would be that you would first think about the questions that would be interesting for you, and then start finding the data that would be needed to actually produce some kind of analysis supporting your questions, because you might use quite a bit of time to actually exploring all possible data sources and so on. But of course you can also get quite nice ideas when looking of like what kind of data is available. So this PyTool is one service, then there is this Avoin Data, so OpenData.fi service that has a lot of data available. Then if you would, for example, compare in Helsinki 2 different neighborhoods to each other, there's this Helsinki region InfoShare that you can use as a data source. There is for Tampere, if you would compare, for example, Helsinki and Tampere to each other, there is this open data service for the city of Tampere. So there is a lot of data available that you can use. And indeed, yeah, maybe that's it. So there is quite a bit of information available on this website, and I recommend you to go through them. Maybe concerning this one, there is also a bit of literature available. So they're thinking of these urban indicators. So there is one European Commission kind of, well, it's a PowerPoint, more or less, kind of explaining and giving a bit of information for you that, okay, if we think about cities and how to manage them and how to create sustainable cities, how do we actually measure like what is sustainable and what kind of indicators can be used. So there is this kind of report kind of giving a bit of background information but also motivation that what could be done in here. So it's this kind of short report that you can use. Then there is another article as well. These from Rob Kitchen and others, also kind of focusing on on this city benchmarking, so kind of using different indicators to understand the functioning of cities. So this might be useful for you to take a look, and there is also nice links about really these kind of city dashboards, for example, from London and from, this is fast, and from Dublin, kind of showing what kind of things have been done and used to understand the city. So kind of get a bit of inspiration from these. And of course, if you might be useful in the introduction also to cite these report and the article if you use that one. So that's the second one, and then the own project work is the last one. So if you have any MSc thesis work, for example, so please send us a proposal what you would like to do in that, what kind of data you would be using to do that, basically kind of so that we understand that is it feasible or not from the data perspective, and then also thinking about what kind of analysis should be used to do that. You can use the analysis things that we have learned during this course, but of course the idea is that we hope that now you would also have some skills to find information yourself and use maybe some even additional tools that have not been covered during the course to actually really start using the programming language for your own purposes. This is now just a starting point, and it's kind of an ever-ending learning process when doing programming, and using a lot of Google is the thing that we all do when sorting out things. So those three things are kind of available for you. Maybe the first one is, well, it might be it depends what you do, but might be the easiest one, at least, that there's quite specific things that you need to do, and they're quite well defined in here. So if you just want to do the work, so that might be the one that you choose when doing things. So indeed here the idea is that you use some text files, read them in, do some comparisons and these kind of things, and kind of produce certain type of functions to actually manipulate the data, and also create maps and visualization. So, but there's a lot of information in here, so you can read that from here. Yeah, but that's maybe kind of a short intro to the final work. There is also information, well, for example, what should be returned, so the notebooks and the documentation, of course. The deadline is on 11th of January, so you have plenty of time. There's Christmas coming and everything, so it's a bit challenging time in that sense. But in the beginning of January, you still have some time. If you need to have the grade and the course, well, the course grade and things registered in web audit, for example, before the end of this year, then yeah, just send us a note so that we do the things fast for you. And of course, we should then have the final assignment as well, so that should be done. Yeah, there is also some article about best practices in programming that might be interesting for you, kind of the guidelines how to do these works. But we have gone through quite a bit of these principles already during the course, such as don't repeat yourself, use functions, and so on. Maybe something, especially now when this is a larger project that you will be doing, so make incremental changes, commit like often. So kind of when you do things, don't try to write the whole thing at one go, but kind of write a bit of the things and test what you have been doing, and does it work, and does it produce the results that you expect, and so on. I guess this is something that you have already learned during the exercises, but that's a good thing to emphasize in here. And indeed, commit the things frequently to GitHub. That's another useful thing, so that you at least, anything can happen with the computer and so on, so that you wouldn't lose your work, and also that you would have a history of the changes that you have been doing in place. Yes, but do you have any questions at this point? So indeed, I recommend reading this document before starting, and then plan what you do. That's always a good thing in the beginning.
And also, if you haven't yet watched last week's guest lecture video, that could also give you some inspiration.
Oh yeah, that's right.
OSM and Next developers, in addition to
yeah.
all of this.
Yeah, there is actually, I think there should be maybe even a link. Yes, so there is the last kind of indicator, the urban design. So there is actually a link to, let's see. That's right clicking. Oops. So there is a link to Geoff's kind of example notebooks, where you have a lot of these kind of urban design related analysis. So you can go and check these if you're interested in such analysis that Geoff represented us in the week 6 lecture. So they are all in here.